Began Well, Ended Badly by J. Wilburn. All right, the flashbulbs snapped in an endless strobe as the two men took their places at the front. The questions overlapped one another, but both of them let the moment hold. They might not have spoken much since the 70s, but they both understood putting on a show. All right, let me add a word there. Endfire sat down before Maxwell. Maxwell stood a while longer with his helmet still on and that old tan leather suit that clearly fit a little tighter around the love handles, say these days. He threw the hang loose sign with both gloved hands. Say the press seemed to eat it up. All right. Endfire stared at the table so there would not be pictures of him of his eyes rolling. All right. Lots of little typos to fix here, it appears. Finally, Maxwell sat and pulled off the helmet. He set it on the table between the two of them with the magic eye symbol and other details facing out. I have space over here on the floor, Endfire said, if you want me to get that out of our way. Maxwell continued to smile as he smoothed down his handlebar mustache. They love it. It brings back memories of the old days. Endfire smiled tight without showing his teeth. It sure does. Pardon me. All right. Maxwell waved the crowd of reporters down. The flashes continued, but the jabber of questions... Excuse me, I don't need to get hiccups right now. All right. All right. The flashes continued, but the jabber of questions fell off. I know you guys are excited about this announcement, as excited about this announcement as we are. The old team is getting back together. Maxwell seized Endfire's wrist and raised his hand above the old helmet. Endfire sighed, but extended one finger. A purple flame erupted above it like a torch. Everyone oohed and applauded. Another strobe of flashes followed. Endfire ended up smiling with his teeth. He closed his fist and let the flame extinguish before he set off the sprinklers. But let's say before he could set off the sprinklers, so it doesn't sound like he did. All right. Maxwell finally released his grip. Okay. I know you have questions. This reunion is very new. We are still working out details among ourselves with the hero guilds and, of course, in full compliance with Homeland Security and the DoD. But we will answer what we can, so one at a time. Everyone spoke at once. Maxwell called on a young woman reporter near the front. He winked at her as she introduced herself and identified her news outlet. All right, let me fix a typo there. I see you pulled out the old uniform, Maxwell. Are you going to stick with the same team name? No, Endfire said. Everyone laughed. Maxwell smiled with a few less teeth showing. We're still discussing it, but one thing we want to communicate is that we recognize the important work we did together back then. Let's say which inspired so many heroes today. The same spirit will guide us no matter what team name we settle on in the end. The next reporter stood. What inspired you two to put aside your old differences after all these years to even talk, much less reform your partnership? Maxwell and Endfire exchanged a long silent look. Flashes continued. Maxwell shrugged and Endfire leaned into his microphone. It was at an award show. We ended up with the trailers near each other. I was presenting and one of the artists Maxwell's company manages was nominated that year. We just got to talking, Maxwell picked up, and it was just the two of us. All right. It was just the two of us, and a lot of what went on didn't seem as important as it had in the past. We had both grown and both matured. One thing led to another. We started talking about our goals, and they seemed to match up. Maxwell glanced at Infire, and they nodded it to one another. Let me have... let me add one more thing here. Another reporter shouted out without being called on. What about the Namahone? Let me make that 2 words. The Namahone Island incident. All right. The room got quiet. Maxwell licked his lips, but still didn't speak. Infire spoke up. That was a long time ago. There has been plenty written on it. I don't know that there is much else to say. What are your thoughts on it? The reporter persisted. The reporter persisted. After all these years, now that you are getting back together. Maxwell, okay, hold on. Maxwell said, I think Infire summed it up well enough. We were young. We got in over our heads. Other veteran superheroes were there too, and they said it was one of the hardest days of their careers. But of course, you all already know that. The hero guilds and special congressional, let's say special commissions. Let's make it congressional so it sounds like they're connected. Special congressional commissions but of course you all already know that the hero guilds and special congressional commissions all found there was nothing that could have been done differently. Since then, a lot has been learned, and procedures are in place to protect from surprises like that in the future. I think that's all there is to say about it, unless we're just trying to stir up old controversies, which I know you professionals are above. He quickly called on another reporter before the guy could keep it up. Say the next one asked, will Stargirl be joining the team? Infire lowered his head. Maxwell's jaw worked. Well, first of all, it is Starwoman now. Next, well, Infire cut in without lifting his head. We haven't decided on expanding to other team members who joined up in the 80s and 90s. We haven't decided on any new team members either. We sort of need to figure out our work together as a duo before we involve anyone else. I like that answer, Maxwell said. Let's go with that. Laughter followed, but that same reporter called out for a follow-up before Maxwell could pick the new person. I'm asking because that was such a point of contention between you two at the time. More than a few people blame her for the team's breakup. Maxwell sighed and said, listen, Starwoman, we both... Two tendrils of smoke escaped Infire's nostrils. He lifted his head, but looked over the heads of all those reporters into the light. We are the only ones to blame for our split. Who we dated and what we did after had nothing to do with it. We reached a point that we couldn't get along. Because you both dated her. Look. Let's make that a better break. You both dated her at... Look, Maxwell waved a hand like he was trying to sweep the reporter away. If the guy had been close enough, Maxwell was probably strong enough to actually sweep him away physically. You don't get every question, dude. If it was asked and answered. She's married to a great hero. They have wonderful kids who will make great heroes one day. Those interactions are in the past, and we're moving on with the future. Next question. Do you have any concerns about Infire's bad flame days? All right, let me italicize that. Bad flame days. Infire's eyes flared red and faded slowly. Maxwell was starting to say, if I had any concerns that he would, that's in the past too. The microphone hummed with a spot of feedback that bled back into silence very slowly. I did what I did for my own reasons. I've been reinstated. I have a sponsor and monitors. I've met all my benchmarks and have had a fine career as a hero again. The new reporter pressed on that, let's say, a fine and quiet career as a hero since. A hero again. A new reporter pressed on that point with the next question. It's fine to say you are no longer a villain, but many people suffered, and Maxwell was a big part of the team that fought against you in those years. Infire said, I don't know what else to tell you about that. Maxwell, all right, I need to put an extra L on here. I have a bad habit of spelling names differently throughout, and it makes a mess when I'm trying to edit. Maxwell patted Infire's shoulder, but then pulled his hand away quickly with a sizzling sound. Jesus, man, cool off. Okay, like you said, I was fighting against him those years. All those years. It was sort of an extension of arguments we were always having. We had a lot to work through, and that was part of the journey for us. It led us to being here, and that makes it all worth it. I've looked into my old friend's eyes, and he is not Bad Flame anymore. There is none of that in him. I only see the hero I always knew. Maxwell smiled into the silence. When no applause came, his smile faded. Infire snorted, and a puff of green flame flashed from his nose. Maxwell cut his eyes at his partner. Next question. Unfortunately, the next question was much like the last question. It's great for you to forgive him, but not everyone has. It's great that you guys worked out your differences, but when a hero and a villain work things out, let's put marks there. Work things out in public. Buildings are knocked down. People are hurt, and the damage remains. Remains for non-heroes. Let's say non-superheroes. Non-superheroes to clean up. Alright. I'm not a villain. Infire's skin took on a white hot glow. Alright, I need to put that together. White hot glow. Several cameras captured it as it faded. That's enough, Maxwell said. It's not up to you whether he's paid enough. It's already been decided by the people who matter. Questions came rapid fire. One that rang loudest was, so you're saying non-heroes and the victims don't matter? That's not what I'm saying. Maxwell tried to wave off the questions, but couldn't. Infire shouted, I'm not proud of everything I've done, but I'm making an effort. The future is the only thing that I can... Are you still banned from travel in 30 countries? Infire sighed out, let's say a puff of steam. A puff of steam. Maxwell covered his microphone. 30 countries still? How are we supposed to fight crime? Are we some local crime fighters now? Infire held up his hands. All of that will be cleared by the time we start. That's part of the deal with the guilds. All right. A reporter called, are you saying the guilds are covering up the punishments for your crimes? Infire waved a hand over his head. If you're asking about the past, why aren't you talking about his Maxwell days? What are you doing? Max didn't bother to cover the microphone this time. I'm just saying, we all have a past. I was in a few art films. All right, let's make that italics. I was in a few art films before I knew I had powers. That's nothing like being a villain. And Fire shook his head. Art films, right? I'm not ashamed of anything I've done. That's half the problem with you, Infire mumbled. What did you say? All right, hold on. You have super hearing. I know you heard what I said, and you know what I mean. Maxwell growled between his teeth. So, this is about Stargirl. Starwoman, someone yelled from the back. Maxwell, again, gotta make sure I spell his name right all the time. Maxwell stuck up one gloved middle finger at the reporters. A fury of flashes followed. You never apologized for what you did because you were never sorry for any of the pain you cause. Infire said. That's rich coming from you, Bad Flame. You were still trying to make art films. Let's italicize that again. You were still trying to make art films in your spare time when I was out fighting crime. You never had my back. You had Stargirl's back. She came on to me, Maxwell said. The young reporter up front said, in her biography, she says you took advantage of her, Maxwell. Do you have a comment on that? Maxwell's jaw fell open, but no answer came out. She asked you a question, Maxwell. You have always been a pain. You were a pain even when you weren't a villain. Always a pain. Why don't you tell them the real reason you need me for this final act of your career? You shut your mouth, Infire. Shut it right now. Maxwell has been using... Okay, let's say Infire leaned into the microphone and his voice echoed. I know that's not really how microphones work when you're doing a press conference, but I'm going to do it anyway. Maxwell has been using alien DNA to enhance his power for years. The room erupted. Maxwell jumped to his feet. He bumped the table and his helmet fell over on its side. Infire glowed as he laughed. That stuff catches up to you. It does damage. Now he needs me to have his back again so he can drag himself out there to put on a show for all of you. Maxwell grabbed up the helmet. I can't believe you would do this to me. Not even you. He wasted all his money gambling on... good grief. Let me fix some things here. He wasted all his money on gambling and booze. No... Now he needs this reunion tour to cover his debt. So that is your glorious golden era. All right, let me capitalize golden era. Golden Era. Super. Maxwell swung his helmet. Alright, let me do a cutoff here. We'll do an M dash. It always bothers me that I have to hit 3 keys to get an M dash. Maxwell swung his helmet into Endfire's side. Endfire crashed through the sheetrock and cinder block. He smashed into the engine block of a delivery truck before he stopped. Maxwell centered his helmet and lowered it slowly over his head. Look at that. Not bad for a guy you thought was washed up. Alright, let me put an ED on that. Endfire launched forward. Maxwell put up his hands, but Endfire grabbed the helmet instead. As Maxwell watched, he tore it in half and crushed the pieces together. No, Maxwell screamed. That's a collector's item. Oh, sorry about that, buddy. Endfire tore the front off Maxwell's leather suit. Was this a collector's? Maxwell threw himself forward, and they plowed into the parking lot together. Cars and asphalt divided and tumbled away in both directions. Let's say every direction. In every direction. Endfire roared, and a ball of flame engulfed them both. Maxwell screamed before he... Here we go. A little typo there. Maxwell screamed before he seized Endfire and hurled him straight up into the air like a reverse meteorite. Clutching his sides as smoke rose off his ruined uniform, Maxwell groaned on his knees. As the flashbulbs popped from the opening in the side of the conference center, he did his best to stand up straight in a heroic pose. He didn't have the strength to suck in his gut. Suck in his gut this time. Alright. Endfire fell back to earth and plunged through an apartment building across the street. Maxwell cursed under his breath and ran to help. Not this again. Endfire blasted his way out the front. Flames climbed the ruins and spread to the other buildings. Stop, Maxwell said low. Stop, Maxwell. Let's have him growl. Growled low. You're going to get us both in trouble. You've ruined everything. It's always me, huh, Maxwell? Maxwell, come on. For some reason I didn't want to put that extra L on the end. Maxwell waved his hands at the burning buildings. Yes, all this trouble, it's your fault. It's always your fault. There is a fire. You caused the fire, so you are to blame, and I have to be the one to... Endfire blasted a surge of energy into Maxwell's chest, knocking him backward. He struck... Alright. He struck the corner of the conference center, and the remaining walls cascaded down. Reporters tried to escape through the opening. The hero team. The hero team had knocked through the wall, but not all of them made it. Then there were many others deeper in the building who had no warning this was happening. Stop this, Maxwell roared. You hit me first. He had to think. Did he hit him first? It didn't matter. Just stop. I never started Maxwell, never once. Always coming for trouble, including begging me to save you from yourself. It started at Namahone, and I've never stopped lying for you since. All these people... Maxwell pointed at the fallen building. Several screams rose from the rubble. Then save them. You're the hero, right? Let me italicize that. You're the hero, right? I'll save them by finally ending you. Alright, let's put an L on the end of Maxwell. Maxwell sprung forward, but Endfire flew to meet him in the air. On a stream of fire like a rocket. The impact of their strikes into one another sent out shockwaves that brought down more buildings. Emergency responders and other hero teams were scrambled to the scene. Maxwell clamped down on Infire's throat. Infire heated up, blistering the skin over Maxwell's hands and forearms. He still wouldn't let go. Infire dug deep and projected all his heat wild in every direction. Say his face turned into a flare of bright spiraling particles. Maxwell stared down into the dark pits of his old friend's eyes. In the midst of that energy reaction. Okay, there we go. Moving along. His face. Okay, I already did that. They were encased in a ball of white light, hotter than the sun. The city melted and burned. The destruction expanded out into the suburbs. Maxwell would not let go. The core of an imaginable heat and power exploded out and up in a series of chain reactions. The region became a crater. Let me add something more here. A firestorm of superheated air and debris turned into plasma. Turned into plasma. A firestorm of superheated air and debris turned into plasma that fed in and around itself in a terrible feedback loop of heat. All right. The region became a crater. Weather patterns changed around the world. Ash fell, and every hero had to work together to avoid a nuclear winter. Debate continued for years about whether Maxwell and Infire, either one, could have survived that day. Their request for team status was revoked, of course, and APBs were sent out across the known universe and into adjoining dimensions. Hero reputations may have never been the same since. The incident is used in hero training. Let's say much like the Namahone Island incident. The reunion incident. The reunion incident is used in hero training all the time.